My name is Ethan. I'm 34 years old, a husband, a father of two, and, until recently, a man who believed that reality could always be explained by logic. When we moved into the old house on the edge of town, it felt like the fresh start we desperately needed. The house had charm, tall windows, creaking wooden floors, a wide staircase, and even an attic that the real estate agent had called full of character. My wife loved the garden, and I thought the price was almost suspiciously low. But we ignored that. We wanted roots, something stable for Jake and Lily. The first week was filled with boxes, laughter, and exhaustion. Yet from the very first night, the children began noticing what we didn't. It started small. Toys fell from shelves in the middle of the night, though the windows were closed and there were no drafts in the house. Jake swore he hadn't touched them, and Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Dad, it moved by itself," she whispered once, pointing at the floor where her dolls lay scattered. I laughed then, trying to reassure them. "It's just gravity, sweetheart. Old shelves, maybe uneven." My wife agreed, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Children imagine things we told ourselves. They dream, they half-wake, they see shadows. But then came the footsteps. At night, something walked across the attic floorboards. Slow, deliberate steps, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging across the wood. I went up there more than once with a flashlight and a kitchen knife in my hand, bracing for rats, or maybe even a raccoon. Each time, silence. Just dust, cobwebs, and boxes left behind by the previous owners. Jake grew afraid of sleeping alone. He claimed he saw someone watching him from the attic window. Lily, only 6 years old, began drawing strange figures with black, hollow eyes, figures standing beside her bed. And then came the night of the recording. I set up a camera in the upstairs hallway, thinking maybe I could finally prove to myself that this was all in our heads. The next morning, when I pressed play, I felt my blood run cold. At first, the footage showed nothing, just dim light, a still corridor. Then the children's bedroom door creaked open on its own. Inside, both Jake and Lily lay fast asleep. Seconds later, a shadow moved across the wall. It wasn't shaped like a person. It was too tall, too thin, its form shifting as if made of smoke. It slid along the plaster in silence. That night, Lily's scream tore me from sleep. I rushed into her room, my heart pounding, and found her staring up at the ceiling with wide, tear-filled eyes. Her trembling finger pointed to the attic hatch above. From beyond the hatch came a faint, steady tapping. I opened it, flashlight in one hand, knife in the other. The attic greeted me with silence again. Dust swirled in the beam of my light. And then I saw it. In the center of the floor lay a doll. It wasn't ours. A filthy, worn-out thing, with one half of its face rubbed away and two glassy eyes staring straight at me. That was the moment I knew we were not alone in this house. I didn't tell my wife about the doll that night. I carried it downstairs, shoved it into a garbage bag, and placed it in the outside bin before she or the kids could see. My hands shook the whole time. Something about the weight of it, the way its glass eyes seemed to follow me, made me want to throw it as far from the house as possible. But the next morning, when I took out the trash, the doll wasn't in the bin. The bag was still there, tied shut, empty. That same evening, Lily came to me with her small hand curled around something. She opened her fist. My stomach dropped. It was a button, faded, chipped, and identical to the one sewn onto the doll's clothes. "Daddy," she said softly, "she gave this to me. She says I have to keep it safe." "Who gave it to you, Lily?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. "The lady from the attic." That night, my wife finally admitted she was hearing it too. "Whispers," she whispered herself, almost ashamed. "Why put Lily to bed when the lights go out?" I hear a woman's voice, right in my ear. "Ethan," I thought I was going mad. The next days blurred into each other. Jake refused to go upstairs alone. Lily kept drawing her hollow-eyed figures, adding details, long hair, sharp fingers, broken teeth. My wife grew pale, restless, snapping at small things. I hardly slept. Every sound in the night made me sit upright, holding my breath. One evening, as I was tucking Jake in, he grabbed my arm with surprising strength for an 8-year-old. His eyes were wide, frantic. "Don't let her in, Dad," he whispered. My throat went dry. "Boo!" He lifted his small hand and pointed to the corner of his room. I turned my head slowly. There was nothing. But for the briefest second, I thought I saw the wallpaper ripple, as if a shadow had leaned forward and retreated again. That was when I made the mistake of going back into the attic. I told myself I needed answers, that maybe there was some rational explanation we'd overlooked. I climbed up alone, flashlight in one hand, recorder in the other. Dust choked the air, cobwebs tangled around my sleeves. The beam of light swept across boxes and broken furniture until it froze on something at the far end. The doll. It sat upright this time, against the wall, hands in its lap, as if someone had carefully placed it there. And then, a voice. Soft, broken, seeping out from the dark. "Why did you come back?" I nearly dropped the flashlight. The beam shook across the rafters, but no one was there. Just the doll, and the darkness pressing closer around me. The voice came again, this time clearer, sharper. "They're mine." I backed toward the hatch, my breath ragged, my hands slippery on the flashlight. The last thing I heard before I slammed the hatch shut was the faint, horrible sound of tiny feet pattering across the floorboards above me. Not the slow, heavy footsteps from before. Children's footsteps. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the words in my head. "They're mine." Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that doll sitting there, waiting for me, with its glass eyes shining in the beam of my flashlight. In the morning, I decided I couldn't hide it from my wife anymore. Over coffee, I told her everything. The voice, the doll, the footsteps. Her face drained of color. "Ethan," she whispered, "I saw that doll too." She explained that when she went to check on Lily in the middle of the night, she found the toy sitting on the rocking chair in our daughter's room. She thought I'd put it there to scare the kids. "I swear to you," I said, my voice breaking, "I threw it out. Twice." Later that day, I came home from work to find Jake and Lily sitting on the living room floor. Between them was the doll, propped upright, perfectly centered. "Where did you get this?" I demanded, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jake looked at me with a confused frown. "She put here, Dad." "Who?" He pointed toward the darkened stairwell. "The lady. She says it's hers. She says we have to keep it." My wife grabbed the doll and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a dull thud and slumped to the floor. For a moment, I thought I saw its arm twitch. That night, we heard laughter in the halls. Not children's laughter. Something higher, stretched, wrong. It drifted from the attic down the stairs and into every room of the house. I locked our bedroom door, but Lily's scream shattered the silence. I raced into her room and froze. She wasn't in bed. The sheets were tossed aside, the window open wide, the curtains blowing in the night air. And there, in the center of her bed, sat the doll, clutching Lily's stuffed rabbit in its lap. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the empty bed. Lily was gone. I tore through the room, yelling her name, my wife right behind me. The night air coming through the open window was icy cold. I leaned out, panicked, scanning the yard. Nothing. Just the shadows of the trees swaying in the wind. Then, from above, came the sound. The patter of small feet. On the attic floor. I didn't think, I just ran. My wife tried to stop me, but I was already pulling down the hatch, climbing up the creaking ladder, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the dust and darkness. And there she was, Lily, standing in the middle of the attic, her nightgown brushing against the dusty floor, her eyes glassy and unfocused. She wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, just staring at something I couldn't see. "Lily!" I shouted, rushing toward her. That's when I noticed the doll. It was sitting right at her feet, perfectly upright, staring at her as though they were having a silent conversation. I grabbed Lily, shaking her gently. "Wake up, baby, wake up." Her eyes blinked rapidly, like she was surfacing from deep water. Then she gasped, clung to me, and whispered, "She doesn't want you here, Daddy." I scooped her into my arms and bolted down the ladder, slamming the attic hatch shut with my foot. My wife was waiting below, trembling, tears running down her cheeks. We locked Lily's window. We locked every door. But deep down I knew locks didn't matter. Whatever this was, it was already inside. That night, none of us slept. Every few minutes, we heard faint tapping from the ceiling. Sometimes soft whispers, like someone speaking right above us. Sometimes laughter that made my blood run cold. At 3:12 a.m., the lights flickered. The hallway bulb shattered. And in the glow of the broken glass, I saw it just for a moment. A tall, black figure at the end of the hallway. Long hair hanging in front of its face. It raised its hand slowly and pointed straight at Lily's door. I froze when I saw it. The tall figure at the end of the hall, its arm lifted, bony finger aimed directly at Lily's room. My first instinct was to run at it, to protect my daughter, but the second I stepped forward, the hallway light flickered back on. And just like that, it was gone. Only shards of glass littered the floor, crunching under my bare feet. My wife whispered my name behind me. I turned and saw her clutching Lily in her arms, Jake hiding behind her legs. Her face was as white as chalk. I forced a smile I didn't feel. It's gone, I lied. But it wasn't gone. The next morning, Jake refused to leave his room. He sat in the corner, hugging his knees, whispering to himself. When I finally coaxed him to look at me, his eyes were wide and haunted. "She wants Lily," he said. "She said Lily belongs to her now. If we don't give her back, she'll take us all." I tried to tell him it was just a dream, but then he held out his hands, and my stomach dropped. His small palms were covered in dust from the attic. That evening, I tried again to throw the doll away. I wrapped it in a plastic bag, sealed it with duct tape, and drove it out to the edge of the woods 2 miles from the house. I left it there, buried under branches and rocks. When I got home, I found it sitting on our porch swing, waiting. The children refused to go upstairs that night, so we all camped in the living room, blankets spread across the floor. I kept a baseball bat beside me, though deep down I knew it wouldn't help. Around midnight, the air grew colder. The windows rattled. And then we heard it. The sound of the rocking chair in Lily's room. Creak, creak, creak. Over and over, steady and patient, as though someone or something was sitting there rocking back and forth, waiting for us to come upstairs. Lily buried her face into my chest and whispered a single word that chilled me to the bone. "Mommy." But the voice hadn't been hers. It came from upstairs. The sound of that voice froze us all. It wasn't Lily's, yet it carried her tone, her softness, warped, stretched into something that sounded almost mocking. "Mommy." My wife squeezed my arm so tightly her nails dug into my skin. Jake buried his head under the blanket, muttering prayers he'd learned at Sunday school. The rocking chair above us continued its steady creak. Back and forth, back and forth. Then the voice came again, this time sharper, louder. "Mommy." I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the bat, stormed up the stairs, and slammed Lily's bedroom door open. The room was empty. The chair rocked on its own, its wooden legs scraping against the floorboards. And in it, cradled gently as though by invisible arms, was the doll. I rushed forward and grabbed it. The second my hands touched its filthy fabric, the rocking stopped. The silence that followed was so heavy it pressed against my ears. Then I heard the whisper, right against my cheek. "She doesn't want you. She wants me." I dropped the doll as if it were burning hot, stumbling backward. Its head tilted slowly, glass eyes gleaming in the dim light. I forced myself to pick it up again, heart pounding. I carried it downstairs, ready to burn it in the fireplace. But when I threw it into the flames, something impossible happened. The fire sputtered, hissed, and went out. Just like that. The logs were still dry, the embers still hot, but the flames had died the moment the doll touched them. Behind me, Lily began to scream. I turned and saw her standing in the center of the living room, her small arms outstretched, her eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. Her lips moved, but the voice that came out was not hers. "Give me back my children." Then the lights went out. The entire house plunged into darkness. For a moment, all I heard was my own panicked breathing, the thudding of my heart, and the faint hiss of wind against the windows. Then Lily's voice, or whatever was using her voice, spoke again. "You can't keep them from me." I fumbled for my phone, its flashlight cutting through the shadows. The beam landed on Lily. She was still standing in the center of the room, eyes rolled back, arms stiff at her sides. The doll lay at her feet, untouched by ash despite being thrown into the fire. My wife clutched Jake, sobbing silently, her eyes never leaving Lily. "Ethan," she whispered. "What do we do?" I didn't have an answer. My brain screamed at me to run, to grab the kids and get out. But my legs wouldn't move. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing us down, thick with something unseen. Then from above, the attic door creaked open on its own. Slow, deliberate. The ladder unfolded, its hinges groaning. One by one, soft footsteps began to descend. I raised the bat, my hand trembling. The light from my phone wavered as it landed on the ladder. Nothing was there. The footsteps kept coming anyway. Down the ladder, onto the floor, moving toward us. Lily suddenly gasped, her eyes snapping back to normal. She collapsed to the ground, sobbing, clutching her stuffed rabbit. My wife scooped her up instantly, but it was too late. The presence hadn't left. From the corner of the room, the doll rose to its feet. Not toppled, not dragged. It stood up, jerky, unnatural movements, as if invisible strings yanked it upright. And then it began to walk. Step, 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 straight toward Jake. Jake screamed as the doll shuffled toward him, its tiny arms reaching forward, stiff and twitching. My wife clutched him tighter, but the doll moved faster, unnaturally fast for something so small. I swung the bat. Hard. The doll flew across the room, slammed into the wall, and fell limp to the floor. For a moment, silence. Then, slowly, its head turned toward me. The sound it made was worse than the sight, the grinding crack of fabric and bone that shouldn't exist. It crawled on all fours now, spider-like, dragging itself back across the floor. Straight toward Jake again. "No!" I shouted, kicking it away. "You're not taking my son." The lights flickered back on for a split second. In that flash, I saw her. Not the doll, not a shadow. A woman. Tall, gaunt, her hair hanging in clumps over her face, her eyes nothing but black voids. Her fingers stretched unnaturally long, curling like claws. And in her arms, she held not one doll, but two. Both looked exactly like my children. When the lights snapped off again, Jake went rigid in my wife's arms. He arched backward, his mouth opening in a silent scream. His little body shook violently, as if invisible hands were trying to tear him away from her. I dropped the bat and grabbed onto him, pulling as hard as I could. For a moment, it felt like we were in a tug-of-war with something we couldn't see. My wife was sobbing, screaming Jake's name over and over. And then, just as suddenly as it started, he went still. His chest heaved with desperate breaths. His eyes blinked open. But before relief could wash over me, I noticed it. His eyes weren't the same. Jake's brown eyes were gone. Now they were glassy, reflective, like the doll's. Jake cracked as I cupped his face, searching for the boy I knew. His small hands trembled, clutching at me, but those eyes, those lifeless, glassy eyes, stared right through me. "Daddy," he whispered, but it didn't sound right. His voice was flat, hollow, like an echo coming from somewhere else. My wife pulled him close, rocking him desperately. "He's fine, Ethan, he's fine, he's just in shock." But I could see the truth. My son was there physically, but something inside him wasn't. Lily whimpered from the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "That's not Jake," she said in a small, trembling voice. The air in the room grew colder again. Crumpled in the corner where I had kicked it, twitched. One arm jerked upward, then the other. Its head lolled back, and with a horrible cracking sound, it began to rise to its feet once more. Jake let out a sudden laugh. Not his laugh, too deep, too old. My blood ran cold. "She likes me better," he said. "She chose me." My wife screamed, clutching him tighter, but Jake pushed her away with a strength no 8-year-old should have. He stood shakily, his body jerking with unnatural movements, and began to walk toward the attic ladder that still hung open. "Jake!" I yelled, grabbing him by the shoulders. "Fight it. Come back to me, son." For a split second, his eyes flickered, brown, human, scared. "Dad, help me," he whispered. Then they glazed over again, cold and doll-like. His lips curled into a smile that wasn't his. "She wants us upstairs." At that moment, the attic ladder began to creak, moving as if unseen hands were beckoning it down further. The air filled with a chorus of whispers, overlapping, urgent, pulling us toward the darkness above. And Jake, my Jake, started climbing. I lunged forward, grabbing Jake's ankle as he climbed the ladder. His body twisted unnaturally, his head jerking back to look down at me with those glassy eyes. "Let me go, Dad," he hissed in a voice that wasn't his. "She's waiting." My wife clung to Lily, sobbing, begging me not to go up there. But I couldn't let him vanish into that darkness. Not my son. I hauled him down, fighting against a strength far beyond child's. He thrashed, kicked, screamed in voices that weren't his own. Finally, I pinned him to the floor, pressing my weight down until he stilled. Then the attic erupted. A deafening crash shook the house. Boxes toppled, beams groaned. The sound of countless footsteps thundered above us. The whispers grew into a roar. My phone's flashlight flickered wildly, and in those strobing flashes, I saw them, faces. Dozens of them, peering down from the attic opening. Children's faces, hollow-eyed, broken, silent. Lily screamed. The doll stood upright again, moving toward her in stiff, jerking steps. "No!" I roared, grabbing it with both hands. Its fabric burned cold, like ice biting into my skin. I ran to the fireplace, shoving it into the flames again. This time, I didn't let go. The fire roared to life, unnaturally bright, as if the house itself was gasping for air. The doll shrieked. Not in Lily's voice, not in Jake's, but in the voice of something ancient and furious. It twisted, fought, and finally burst in a black smoke that filled the room before vanishing into nothing. The whispers stopped. The footsteps ceased. Silence. I collapsed to the floor, my hands blistered, my chest heaving. My wife rushed to me, Jake and Lily clinging to her. When I looked at my son, his eyes, thank God, were brown again. Wet with tears, terrified, but his. We didn't stay the night. We didn't even pack. We carried our children to the car, left everything behind, and drove until the house was nothing but a silhouette in the distance. It's been weeks now. We're living with relatives, trying to pretend things are normal. But sometimes at night, I wake to the sound of wood creaking, as though something is rocking slowly in the corner of the room. And yesterday, when Lily came inside from the yard, she was holding something in her small hands. A button. Old. Faded. The same as before.